Alright guys, today's video is the pros and cons of Daikon Radish. Like all my pro and con videos, I'm going to start with the cons and work our way to the pros. Daikon Radish, as far as cons go, is not a cold tolerant plant. So normally I show you healthy plants when I do these pro and con videos, but I'm showing this one this way on purpose to show you what happens when temperatures become too cold. The plants can die from them. We've had several nights in the teens. The coldest it got was 13 degrees so far, and this plant has endured, I would say, 3 or 4 nights total in the teens and several nights in the low to mid 20s, and you can see it's pretty much decimated the plant. They can perish in cold temperatures, but they can also still survive in cold temperatures. So as far as tonnage right now, this is not good for your deer. I mean, they're just obviously, they're not going to eat this at this point, but they probably could dig up your root and eat that part. It's almost basically a mirroring what a turnip does, but there's differences between what a turnip can and can't do. As far as tonnage that plants produce, they vary wildly. This plant does not do well in poor soils, so you need some potassium and nitrogen and all your major nutrients to function good in order to get larger sizes with these. And it's pretty much the same with turnips. If you plant these plants too thick, you generally don't get like those bigger root sizes. They stay more compacted. Turnips have the same effect when the bulb sizes. Too many turnips together create smaller bulbs. So if you're looking for the larger root, or the carrot, it almost looks like a giant white carrot. So if you're wanting those bigger roots, you need to plant fewer of these so they can spread out. Protein wise, these plants do not provide a lot of protein. Turnips are really in that same classification, but it's the root itself that is basically your lower protein content. There's more protein produced in these leaves than what's in this root. The root is generally anywhere from 1 to 3% protein. So as far as growing muscle mass on deer, that is terrible as far as a con to this plant. The seeds are also very, very tiny, so it can be easily overlooked if you're throwing seeds out, and you may not be able to see them from time to time, and you throw too many of them out. So that's where overseeding can be a bit of a problem. As far as growth rates, it will start off a hair slow, not like what deer vetch does. I'm just talking maybe that first week or so can be a hair slow. Poor soils can extend that problem greatly to where it never really takes off. And I've seen that here many times with my poor soil. I plant it, it gets about 3 or 4 inches tall, and it really doesn't do anything after that. Tonnage wise, if you're doing really good soil, these leaves get quite a bit larger than this. If you're looking for a comparison, right here's a pretty healthy looking turnip here. So your leaf sizes are, a lot larger with a lot of these turnips than they are with your Daikon radishes from time to time. As far as taste, like attraction for deer, I'm going to list this as a con because it can vary wildly to the point to where you never see deer hit it. Or some of you are going to say they absolutely destroy these things. So it's kind of really a hit or miss plant. It's not consistent, in my opinion, on as far as attraction or taste. Now, as far as most of the cons, I mean, it's just not that many. but the benefits are great. Now, what are the benefits here? Well, one of the great benefits is this plant, as far as considering it is a vegetable, is one of the highest water containing vegetables you can get. So if deer are really thirsty, these are, you almost treat it like a cactus. And these things store massive amounts of water in their roots. It's one of the reasons why they can get so big. It also contains a vast amount of trace minerals. That includes a pretty high copper content. Now this is all depending on what your soil can provide, but it can offer copper, zinc, vitamin D, vitamin B6, vitamin A, C, vitamin E. I mean, you can go through a laundry list of vitamins that this plant can provide. So this is the root itself is actually very healthy for trace minerals. So the more trace minerals I tend to put in here, the bigger these guys have been getting because they can develop better. So think about that. It's not a protein stacked plant, but if you're planting a whole bunch of other plants designed to pack on protein, these guys are designed to pack on trace minerals. So it's very valuable to deer when they do eat them because you're giving them the other half of their body needs. So if they're dehydrated, they can be rehydrated through eating these plants. They can also gain vitamins that they don't necessarily get from other plants, like clover. I mean, they can provide copper and potassium and stuff like that, but the levels on these tend to be higher, more concentrated, and it is overall a more healthy root for your deer to eat. Now, here's another great benefit. For people with hard soil, this is one of the best bulldozing plants around. Now, I did the video on turnips last year and talked about how turnips also bulldoze the soil. Now, here's the big difference between the two. Turnips generally only bulldoze the upper portion of your soil. And that also depends on how hard your soil is, how rocky it is. Those bulbs can develop literally right on top of the ground, or they can develop, within 3 or 4 inches below the ground, and then they spread out that portion of your soil. These guys can go a long ways down into your soil. They can go a foot deep, more than a foot deep, maybe 14, 16 inches. The healthier your soil gets, the bigger these guys get. And what you see sticking out of the ground is only about 3 inches or so, but that may not be the whole story for this plant. You can also see the great volume of soil that has been pushed up. See the hole it's creating? A lot of soil right here is pushed up. So if I pull that away a bit, you start finding more exposed roots, soil. That soil right there is practically half frozen. There it goes. So it pulled up this really hard piece here, and this here is all loose. The root is still going. I don't think it goes much deeper than that in this occasion. So we'll pull him up. They can get a lot bigger than this. I've seen them here 4 to 5 times longer than this piece is, but it's still a good specimen. This almost feels like you're holding a potato. I mean, it's definitely the size of a lot of potatoes, but you can see the root structure on it here. They actually have really good roots, and these guys will help pull up nutrients from the deep and soften hard soil. Big time help for anybody that has soil problems. So you go over here to turnips. I'll just show you a good comparison here. So like here's a turnip right here. So you're comparing these two. There's nothing really to write home about, but this turnip is literally setting on top of the ground and is rotting. There's roots under here, don't get me wrong, but this is not pushing your soil. This is sitting on top of it. This guy is going to push your soil apart. That is a huge benefit. And you can actually plant this year round. You don't have to keep it in a cold climate, but I want to warn you that these will produce high volumes of seed. So that's a pro or a con depending on how you look at that. If you need seed, I can get more seed off of this, just one plant, and I could easily replant some area 3 or 4 times this size. They definitely produce large volumes of seed. They can also grow very rapidly in the spring. This, you may not really think about this, but when you're doing mixes of different plants, there's different rates of decay. These guys decay very, very quickly. So you have fast decay, which will feed your plants when they're doing their germination process. So you'll get a quick dose of nutrients. The root will take a little bit longer, but these leaves decay rapidly. Now, just because I pulled this up doesn't mean it's dead. So I can actually bury that guy and he'll stay alive. So he'll be stunted for a while, but he'll make out. Now, as far as other benefits go, when that springtime happens and you're talking about rapid growth, I've seen these things as tall as 5.5 to maybe 6 feet, pushing 6 feet, and they can really ramp up tonnage as far as the seed heads they create. Now, it's not going to create gigantic amounts of tonnage because a lot of these leaves right here are really paper thin. It's very, just like turnips, when I go back and forth between these two, they're very thin leaved. There's not a lot behind them, and they usually don't make a lot of leaves like these. Turnips tend to make a few more leaves before they, rapidly stem out. Daikon radish wants to stem, and it generally does it very quickly. Turnips will go fast, but Daikon radish is a little faster at it. It is also a fairly drought-tolerant plant. I've seen it hold up in several weeks of drought, but granted, you're not going to get those big sizes. And the only issue is when that happens and you get drought, and then suddenly you get a lot of rain, and turnips do this too, they will split because they're swelling up so fast they can't handle it. And we had a lot of rain show up, and splitting occurred in this one. You also saw the turnip out here was split. So there's no difference between those when it comes to the way they grow. It's just this guy here is a very, very deep rooted plant. I highly recommend that for hard soil. Like I said, you can even grow it in the spring and summer. So if you want to do 2 rounds of soil pushing and digging, you can do it with this plant to help speed up that compacted soil problem. Again, great plant to have. Now, even if the deer are not really attracted to it like you want, the soil building purposes of this plant is a must. That is why I have not ditched this plant from my plantings. Just like turnips, you can see I keep it in a low percentage, generally in that 1% range, maybe 1.5%. And these guys will do the work I need. So it's really beneficial for soil, creates a big pocket of nutrition when it decays, and leaves behind a void to where your new plants can quickly root in and take off. So these plants give you great benefits for soil, and they will eventually help with deer size because your soil becomes healthier. The rotting cycles help with bacteria. I've also known several times here especially since I started growing these more. The worms are really attracted to them as they decay. So oftentimes when I find rotting turnips and Daikon radish, I will find worms around these, digesting these because they break down quickly. So it's a faster version of worm food. Other plants like, cereal rye that's out here, worms may not hit that for months on end. It might be 4 to 6 months before they really start hammering that, versus these plants, which is one of the reasons why it has a fast decay rate and rapidly can disappear. So you may kill these off if you're doing crimping or tilling, whatever your method you're doing. You'll see them there initially, and then within a week or two, really, they're gone. They decay that quickly. And then you got a vast storage of nutrition with trace minerals in your soil sitting at the top versus down deep. And that's why those new plants can rapidly improve themselves based on the previous set. So there you go, guys. A pro and con video of Daikon radish. I highly recommend this plant in your mixes in order to improve soil health. And if the deer really like them, that's great for you. But if they don't, kind of like what my deer do, I still love the benefits that it improves my other plants and helps me save money for the future. If you like this video, hit that like and subscribe button. And as always, you all have a great day. And I will probably post also additional nutritional information in the community section of the channel now that I'm doing more of these pro and con videos, so you can see what the deer are digesting, or at the very least as a guideline, because soils vary greatly. But I hope that helps you. Keep checking out these videos, guys. Have a good one.